Our next speaker is Dr. Pam Ismail. She is a professor at the University of Minnesota Department of Food Science and Nutrition, and she's also the founder and director of the Plant ProteinInnovation Center. Dr. Ismail has over 25 years of experience in food chemistry research, focused on analytical chemistry, protein chemistry, as well as chemistry and fate of bioactive food constituents. Her research focuses on chemical characterization and enhancement of functionality, safety, bioavailability, and bioactivity of food proteins. Try to say that real fast 3 times. She's the recipient of the Distinguished Teaching Award and the Outstanding Professor Award. From the University of Minnesota Department of Food Science and Nutrition, please welcome Dr. Ismail to Bean Day 2025.
Hello, everybody. It's my pleasure to be here with you today to talk to you about the Plant ProteinInnovation Center and also the research that we've been doing with beans and bean proteins. First, I would like to thank Mitch for inviting me to be here. It's an honor, actually, to be here on the 50th anniversary of Bean Day. So I was 1 year old when this started. So, now you know my age, right? Okay, who loves beans? Come on, a little bit more excitement in the room. You're here for a reason, right? I love beans. My favorite beans dish is a Kenyan rice and beans dish. Rice and beans is a complete protein, so there you are. Okay, so I will introduce the center and what we do and why plant proteins are wonderful and why beans proteins have a great future. Okay, I can look down here instead of out there. Okay, so Plant ProteinInnovation Center, we started it about 6 years ago, so we are celebrating our 6th anniversary as well. So tell you a little bit about it. So what is our mission is really to bring together researchers and industry professionals and farmers and different organizations to innovate in the plant protein space. We work and do research all the way from production on the land, that means breeding, then upstream processing, downstream processing, and to the end consumer. So across the entire value chain. So what is our approach really is looking at challenges and opportunities identified by the industry. And we tackle those challenges and opportunities to provide innovative solutions in the plant protein space. So we are an industry consortium / researchers, so we have industry and organization members with PPIC, or Plant Protein Innovation Center, short for PPIC, or PPIC short for that. So we're over 32 members, really, and we have the big members, the big companies, global companies, and then we also have either the smaller company or the companies that have smaller branch of plant proteins, and also we have startup companies. So we're about like a family of 32 to 35 members, but we also have supporters across the globe, and they support us either by in-kind or by funding research projects or by serving on our board and so on. So coming together to grow research is really important. As researchers, as I'm an academician and I've been in academia for as long as I remember, more than half my life, but we can't work in silos, and we really need to partner to provide solutions that are feasible to scale, to get profit, not just for the industry, but for farmers as well, and also to benefit the consumer and the environment. So we really all have to work together to innovate. So I always start by saying, what's our dream? Okay, it's really a very emotional way, dramatic as far as my Gen Z daughters say, you're very dramatic, Mom. Yes, I am a little bit, but dreaming is a form of planning. So when I'm at panels, people ask me, are plant proteins really sustainable? You go and say, well, animal production is not as sustainable. Is plant protein production sustainable? If you take the cow, we use 99% of the cow. Can we use 99% of a crop so that we can utilize all its value? Is cheddar cheese from plant source a dream? Well, yeah, it is a dream, but maybe we can dream something else, that we don't have to make plant-based cheese or plant-based meat. The meat eaters, let them eat meat. The cheese lovers, let them have their mozzarella on their pizza. But also, let's generate new sources of protein to feed the growing population. And that's why I always say, okay, we don't have to make plant protein behave like animal protein. Let's make them characteristic of them all. Who eats falafel? Do you know what falafel is? Okay, it's high in protein, it's very nutritious, but it's not a meat alternative. It's not a plant-based burger. So we can really make things with plant protein that taste good and satisfy the nutrition, and they don't have to act or behave like animal meat. So dreaming is a form of planning. So really, without leaps of imagination or dreaming, we lose the excitement of possibilities. So we really need to plan. So what we do at the Plant ProteinInnovation Center, we profoundly listen to our stakeholders, loyally gather their questions, actively develop research projects, and naturally share knowledge. So we plan to listen, gather, develop, and share. So Plant Protein Innovation Center acts as a nerve center in the ecosystem. So like I said, we work across the value chain. So we do research on the production side of things, on breeding or investigating new crops that have environmental benefits that could have a protein aspect of it that we can leverage and valorize so that this crop can bring revenue back to the farmers. So we do upstream processing, so we get that seed, or even alfalfa is not a seed like the leaves or the grain, and we look at ways to get that into a flour matrix. So there's a lot of upstream processing that has to happen, and then from there you have the downstream processing to get a protein ingredient, and you have formulation. And then we look at ways to upcycle, to utilize everything that comes as a co-product or a side product from the production. And then we look at applications that benefit the consumer. So the way we do that is we gather our expertise from different fields. So we have the breeders, the geneticists, the chemists, the biologists, the engineers, the sensory scientists. We all come together to innovate. So the center capabilities are wide. You can check out our website, but we do a lot of processes, like I said, from beginning to end, a lot of analytical, a lot of pilot scale, a lot of characterization. We have so many different researchers across, again, the different fields, from the University of Minnesota and external to the University of Minnesota. And our mission as educators is to send out professionals with expertise to become our, we say future hires, but also those that control our future in so many ways. So we do host events also. So if you want to know more, we do have our annual events. We do offer short courses, workshops, research meetings as well, where there's a lot of our members and non-members come together to interact. We offer these networking opportunities and interaction with researchers, with industry, with students, providing solutions and scalability of these solutions for application purposes. So with that, I'll just start with talking about plant proteins a little bit, or proteins in general, and what do we want from these plant proteins, and I'll end with examples on bean proteins. So just to give you a kind of an idea, so global protein demand is increasing and is on the rise, especially with the increase in population. So it's not just plant protein, consumption of animal protein is increasing. So the demand is increasing, the protein ingredients that go into formulation, demand for that is increasing. Currently, the market value is around $78 billion, but it's anticipated to grow at a compounded annual growth rate of 6% through 2030. In North America alone, if we look at plant protein ingredients, the market value is about $5 billion and also increasing with a compound annual growth rate of 4% also through 2030. Just to give you a kind of statistics here. So reasons for interest in plant proteins from a consumer side of things: sustainability in the environment, animal welfare, health is associated with plant-based diet, looking for new diverse options for proteins. People that are allergenic to certain proteins are looking for different types of proteins. So there are different reasons. Because of all these reasons, we see a surge in vegans, vegetarians, flexitarians. Flexitarians are those people that prefer plant-based diet, but sometimes still have their steak once in a while. So the consumer is seeking those options. So from a producer perspective, producers are starting to look for those additional plant protein sources, how to utilize them, how to increase the value of side streams. For example, soybean, we all know now there's an interest in biofuels. So there's a lot of meal that's going to be produced. How are we going to use that meal? So canola, same thing, other oil seeds, utilize that side stream byproduct for protein production. Finding that niche part in the market where they can benefit and have revenue. So that's what the producers are looking for. But also we don't want to forget that in 2050, there are going to be 10 billion people on the planet, so we need to find new sources of protein. So it's not just about replacing animal protein by plant protein, it's just utilizing our agriculture system smartly to produce more protein on the land. So the current applications for plant proteins are plant-based milk. We see quite a surge in oat milk, for example. Plant-based cheeses, yogurts, ice cream, that's a big category as well. And meat analogs, the Beyond Burger, the Impossible Meat, all of that. But consumers are looking to replace soy protein and gluten protein in the diet, whether it's for good reasons or just bad propaganda, but that's what they're looking for. So we really need to look at other options. So we have so many options to look at, and we are studying all of these legumes, pulses. Peas is the giant now in the market, trying to replace soy, growing fast in the market. And then behind it is chickpea, and there are different types of beans as well. Oil seeds, we're looking at environmental crops that are winter cover crops that can be used in crop rotations as well. So winter crops and perennial crops as well, and then looking at value so that the farmer can get revenue at the end of the day. So looking at a high value ingredient or product such as the protein. Other plant proteins, oat protein, hemp becoming very popular these days. Leaf like alfalfa protein, and of course dry beans is something we're looking into. And others like potato, corn, there are other proteins like almond protein. So the sky is the limit in terms of where we can find protein and what to work with. So just a very high level, telling you what we want from our protein in our foods or beverages. You know of high protein beverages, athletes, they go out, they do an exercise and they want protein rich beverage or food to consume to regenerate their muscles. So protein needs to be soluble so that we can put a lot of it in solution and have a beverage so that we can consume. We also want the plant protein to behave like dairy protein, so yogurt. So what is yogurt? It's a form of a gel. So the protein forms a network and holds water. So we want the plant protein to act like that so that we have plant-based yogurt. We also want plant-based cream cheese, for example. So there's high fat in there and there's water in there. So we want the protein to emulsify so that we can have a nice cream, consistent. We also want that protein to behave like meat. So we want to extrude it and have fibrous structure so that when we bite into that texture, we feel like we're eating meat, but it's not. So we really are asking a lot of this plant protein, and it's very challenging because plant proteins are unique. They're not bad, they're just unique. If we look at the chemistry of it, they're very, very different than animal protein. Then whey protein, for example, is a small protein, very soluble. Plant proteins are large proteins, not very soluble. There's always this love-hate relationship with water that complicates things because a lot of our food systems are aqueous, they have water. And then when we process, they kind of degrade, denature, form large blobs, aggregate. They're not functional. So now we say, okay, how are we going to make them behave like meat when they're not going to texturize like meat? Or how are we going to make them go into solution to have that high protein beverage when they don't like water at all? So we have issues there, and that's where we are looking for solution and looking at future and the next generation of products. So the wave of meat and dairy alternatives remain in full swing. People are looking for it and we are researching it, but there are major glaciers ahead of those. So this area or this category is really targeting the older generation. So boomers, Gen X and Gen Y, we as an older generation, we know what the meat tastes like, what the texture is. It's ingrained in our physiology. The melting mozzarella, when somebody tells me plant-based cheese, I'm going to think of my melting mozzarella, and then I'm going to be disappointed when my plant-based cheese doesn't melt the same way. So we are getting those another pushback of not having what we are expecting in terms of taste and texture, the ultra processing. So in order to make those plant protein taste like meat, look like meat, behave like meat, there's a lot of ingredients that go into that, and that puts them in an ultra processed category. And with that, when they're in the ultra-processed category and the consumer is going to be worried about that labeling, then this will lead to drop in the market, which we already seen a drop of 12% in the annual alternative meat sales in 2023. The value for 2024 is not yet out. So what do we need to do? We need to target our next generation. So next generation, those Gen Zs and Gen Alpha, they really are just environment savvy. They're looking for sustainability. They don't really care for the texture of meat and the cheese. So they are susceptible and able to accept new categories of food if we, build the sustainability story, the environment impact. So that's our Gen Z and Gen Alpha. So because of that, we have this desire to expand our food category using new sources of plant proteins. And after Gen Alpha, God knows what generation. To me, they're aliens, so I don't know what comes after Gen Alpha. But we really have to be forward-thinking of these new generations. So while we are advancing the alternatives to meat and the alternative to dairy, we really have to be creative and think outside of these categories. Sky is the limit, and also this alien new generation coming up, they really don't care. As long as you give them something that looks good, tastes good, is healthy, they're gonna just eat it. They're not gonna remember, they don't have memory of meat or anything like that. But also, another thing I always say, who says we need to get everything from one meal? Or we have to only eat plant or only eat meat? So we just have to be creative and have new options that are desirable and acceptable for the coming generations. So what do we must do? What do we have to do? Is expand our outreach to educate the consumer, what it means by ultra-processing, what it means when you have new ingredients, what it means when you have a new product, what nutrition does it have, what it benefits is giving us. We also have to aim for technological advances bearing in mind our future and the planet, sustainable production of all sources of proteins. Embark on exploratory research. We shouldn't be shy. So when we use dry beans, canned and only dry form, why can't we just expand our research and look what else is in that bean and what can we add value or how can we add value? And scaling is very important. A lot of what we do is not just go research in the lab. Yeah, I can research in the lab forever, but if my research is not translatable, it's not going to be scaled, it doesn't really have any meaning other than education, which is really good, but also we really need scalability. We need to see if that's feasible, and also think of cost parity. We cannot create something like, of course, you heard about cell agriculture, and producing the meat in the lab. It's a great idea and it's very good, but I don't think we are ready yet, cost-wise, to have mass production of that. So what we need to do and what areas need to be addressed is how do we understand these novel proteins? How do we work with them? How do we add them into our food system? Or how do we use them to create new food systems? How do we produce these ingredients in a cost-effective manner? So we look at different ways of extracting the protein, and also how do we utilize it? Looking at ways to discover new crops, look at varietal differences, not only looking at increase of yield on the land, but also potentially targeting the protein component while we're breeding, and increasing the scale of production. So we have different buckets of research: production on the land, processing and formulation, and application type of work. So we have those different buckets, and all of that is explained on our website if you'd like to learn more. But the specific about the research we're doing is funded by the center, but also we have different sources of funding. And of course, Northarvest has been funding us for 2 years to do bean protein research, which I'll talk about. I'm building the excitement, that's all. So we are developing extraction processes for different varieties of proteins, different types of proteins. We're looking at ways to make these proteins behave the way we want them in different food systems. And we're also looking at scaling. So everything we do in the lab, we take to the pilot plant and we test. And we also look at initiating breeding programs for different crops. And as we do anything, whether it's through breeding or processing, we look at the nutritional aspect and the flavor aspect of everything we do. So when we started the Plant ProteinInnovation Center 6 years ago, there wasn't a lot of research, but there was a surge in the demand of alternative proteins. So this graph is, I kind of faked the data. It's not real, but it's my imagination and my dream, is that with the Plant ProteinInnovation Center, the knowledge at some point will meet the demand. Without the knowledge, there will be demand and we don't know what to do with it. So we strive to not only bring economic gain to the industry, but also to address consumer desire for nutritious and healthy food. Also, have a positive impact on our environment by seeking sustainable crops and researching those crops for growing, also for the growing population, to provide new sources, and also hopefully provide revenue to the farmers for producing these crops. Together, we can accelerate research and impact of research. So, how we're moving the needle? We are developing efficient, mild, and scalable protein extraction processes for a lot of different crops: peas, chickpea, hemp, camelina, pennycress, flaxseed, and the list goes on, including alfalfa and dry beans, which I'll talk about. So all of these processes need to be scalable. So we identified scalable processes. We made very difficult proteins like hemp that is not soluble, pea protein that doesn't form a gel, like if you want it to form like a hot dog, plant-based hot dog, not a good protein. So we figured out ways to make it form these gels or food gels. And we are working with breeders to breed for protein traits, not just yield. We are expanding our network, putting our work out there, whether through publications or meetings, and we share our knowledge, basically. So now I have a few slides on the project that we're working on with dry beans, specifically navy beans. So this project is funded by the Northarvest Bean Growers Association, and we were looking at navy beans as a source of a protein ingredient. So I will walk you through this on a high level. So navy beans, you all know, easy to grow, have environmental benefits. They're legumes, so they fix nitrogen, and they can be in crop rotation. Did you know that Minnesota is the largest producer of navy beans? I'm preaching to the crowd, so you probably know that. But you also know that most of the uses are for canned beans and also dry. So what we're trying to do is, how do we maximize the use of bean sources? Of course, proteins is a hot topic, so let's produce protein ingredients from these beans to diversify their utilization, thus increasing their value. So just to look at the composition of navy bean, and I'm just highlighting the protein here, it ranges from a minimum of 20 to a maximum of 29. 29 is very close to soybean protein content, and 20 is very similar to an average of pea, for example. So it's really in that realm of protein content, which is very good. So we want to develop a process that we can get a protein ingredient from this dry bean. And also, we want to look at differences potentially in variety and growing location. So at a very, very small scale, we're looking at 2 varieties grown in 2 different locations. So AURI is a partner with us, and they're helping us to figure out the upstream process where you get that bean. We really need to remove the hull. It's very essential to remove the hull before we can extract the protein. So they're figuring out ways for us to remove the hull and to mill it into flour. That's the essential first piece that is needed before we can get the protein out. So first thing we did, we got these 2 varieties from 2 different locations, and yes, they are within the range of the protein content. We just noticed that one location has higher protein content than the other within the same variety. Then we are looking at typical extraction, wet extraction process for protein. These extraction processes are used for other pulses in the market. So we are not reinventing the wheel. We are just discovering the processes, conditions that are most suitable for that bean protein. So we worked on that, and we were able to produce, under different conditions, a protein ingredient very close to 80% protein. And that was our target. So we got close to 78% protein with a really good yield. 64% of the protein in the bean we were able to isolate. So this is a pretty good yield compared to other pulses like peas, for example, have similar yield when we extract the protein from it. Let me dissect this a little bit for you. You remember I told you we need the protein to be soluble. Most of our food systems have water in it, so the protein needs to interact with water. So, and most of our food systems are either neutral or acidic. So we look at the solubility of the protein under conditions that we produce our protein or food systems, so beverages or other food systems. And if you look here in the maroon and gold, heated and non-heated conditions. So the non-heated and heated conditions, what you can see, if you can see, I don't know if this is, no, I can't use the, right? No, I thought there was, no. No, okay, no problem. So if you look at the far left, so you see that all the beans that we tested, we produced protein ingredients from these beans. The 2 varieties, 2 locations, they have better solubility than pea protein by far. And we compared them to a commercial pea protein that we bought. Much more soluble at 2 different pHs, the neutral and the acidic. They're even more soluble than soy protein. Soy protein is very among the most soluble plant proteins, but they were more soluble than soy protein. So this was pretty exciting finding. I was really pleasantly surprised to see that. Okay, so to test their ability to form food gels, we produced gels in the lab and we measured the strength of the gel. So the stronger the gel, the better they are going to be performed in food gels. So again, which was very pleasing, the gelation of these bean proteins was pretty good and comparable to soy. In some cases, even at lower protein concentration, they were better than soy. I don't have pea protein here because they don't form a gel at 12% or 15%. So pea protein does not form a gel, commercial one. So this is a great also observation. Emulsification, again, if you remember that and the system example I gave you, like if you want to think about salad dressing or if you want to think about cream cheese, plant-based, so anything that has high fat and water and protein, you want the protein to stabilize the system. So we look at how much the protein is able to emulsify oil. So all these beans have better emulsification properties than pea and slightly lower than soy. So it wasn't as good as soy protein, but very comparable and better than pea. So I would say there is a great potential for these proteins to be used in different food systems. Again, I was pleasantly surprised. So are beans a good source of protein? You betcha. Let's read more. Okay, navy beans are a good source of protein. Upstream and downstream processes that we tested are common and scalable and can be used in the industry. We just have to work on dehulling of those different shapes of beans with different hulls. Some hulls are really attached to the cotyledon and really hard to get out. So we're figuring out ways to dehull, but still, these could be similar to what's available there in the market or among processors. So it is a competitively functional protein, sometimes better, sometimes similar to soy protein, which is the golden standard for plant proteins in the market. We believe that it is as nutritious as soy, but these are investigations that we are currently doing. But since it's a legume, we think it's going to have similar nutritional quality. And we really want to explore other dry beans. So there are initiatives to look at pinto beans and kidney beans. So these are ongoing trials. So with that, I'll just thank my research group. I thank you for your attention. If you don't know about us, learn more about us, partner with us, all towards the betterment of our environment, sources of proteins, and changing the landscape of plant protein. So this is our website if you need to learn more, and I guess this is it.